lore drop about the time that I went to spiritual psychosis and what inspired me to make this painting. This painting was inspired by some of the delusions and visualizations and real life things that had happened to me. I cried every single time I touched this canvas, and that's honestly why it took a year, because processing a lot of what I went through was really hard for me. So a disclaimer before we get into this video, I am not glamorizing anything that I did, and if you have ever been through something similar, I want you to feel seen and know that you are just God's favorite. Okay, you may be crazy, but He chose you to give that crazy to. Okay, picture in the middle is me looking up at this blue light during, and the light was so beautiful to me. I loved when they turned blue. I don't know if you guys had that happen to you guys in your neighborhoods, but my sister has a picture. I'll insert it. That was like my true form. Like I became very just like comfortable with myself. I remember I started wearing my hair on my head because I thought it made me feel like a tree. To this side, I have me as a sperm and my DNA and that going into a tree. That has a lot of meaning because there was a time when I was up for like, I want to say a week, being crazy delusional, but I couldn't sleep, so I just ended up falling into this deep meditation where I had like a spiritual awakening where everything went black. I felt like what it was like to be a planet. I saw how the world kind of came together, and I remember being in my DNA going inside, and when I did that, it had a lot to do with my ancestral roots, I guess. But I had a visual of me standing on top of a pyramid with a, I don't want to say a cauldron, but like a wine glass, and I remember pouring it upside down and it was filled with blood, and the blood just started flowing down the entire pyramid, interlocking into these Aztec um, patterns, and it was crazy. And then it started like thundering and storming. How Earth was created, and it was basically like Jesus was an alien and he came down and he basically like set up the monk. I was crazy at the time. I don't want to hear it, but I painted it because I thought it was funny. Like, you kind of just have to make humor out of these things, because when you have a creative mind and you're not feeding that creativity, you're gonna go nuts. Fast forward, I had started to scare people, and I felt really bad about it. I was obsessively drawing, and I was just using my art as an outlet, and decided one day to take, after abusing it for like months on end, again, not sleeping, not eating because I thought I was a plant. um, I decided to take it, and I remember I didn't tell my sister, and she was just like, "Girl, what the fuck is wrong with you?" And I was just going even more insane. I was hitting that like peak insanity. Me down because we have had mania in our family before, and that's why I love my sister. She was just trying to bring me back down to earth, but I was not having it. I was like, no, I'm gonna create my own world one day and I'm gonna be a planet. And she's over here. I remember her just listening to me talk, because what are you gonna do when a crazy person is in your face? But that is why I have her painted like that, because that's how I like saw her, like for real. I remember I told her like, yeah, in your past life you were like a king, all this just crazy shit that I can't even remember half the shit. And I also saw, if you've ever seen like the Marvels movies, how they make their portals, it was like the purple kind of moment. That is what I saw, and I kid you not, when I was making this painting, like I look up an Aztec calendar, that is exactly what the fuck I saw, but it was just like spinning, because it happened when I was talking to her and having this moment with her where I was just kind of like being very vulnerable with how I felt, because if anyone knew me before this, I was so quiet, I was shy, I was very depressed, like I didn't open up. So it was definitely something that needed to happen to me. Now, trigger warning, this is mentions of sewer slide. So I didn't sleep that whole rest of the night, and I remember looking out my window and I literally thought I was like shifting dimensions. I was looking at the sun. It was Easter Sunday, that's why I remember it so vividly, and I I literally thought God was talking to me, and he was telling me, girl, you need to go to the trees. You need to return home. Because, obviously God was telling me to get to my car, and this is something you should never, ever, 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 ever in a million years do when you're on somebody's fucking drive. But the best thing I can say is I was selfish. 80 miles per hour was just reckless driving. Sense of calmness that I have never felt in my life. And I have driving anxiety, so for me, this was like, wow. And I remember just taking the wheel, jerking it, and I just remember feeling like rockiness, and I crashed my car into a tree going 80 miles per hour, trying to get back home so I could be a tree too. Car, and I told her, but the car ended up burning, and there were two men that were on a walk that day that pulled me out of the car, and luckily I didn't die. I just had very bad bruising, and I was still crazy for like a month after that. I'm not even gonna lie, because it takes a while for you to kind of come down from such a high. Yeah, that is a brief, very much not in-depth story of that painting, and it's just my experiences and how I process it. I hope that, I guess, my insanity being painted on a canvas is enough for people to kind of understand why I am the way that I am. And I'm happy to share it with you guys because, again, I wouldn't have found my passion if I didn't lose my mind inside me.